The first thing you need to know, the old detective said, is that nobody remembers the killer's mouth. He pushed a yellowed folder across the cafe table. Between the coffee stains and worn edges, a plastic sleeve held a single sheet of paper, a police composite sketch from 20 years ago. The face on the page was unsettling even before I really looked at it. Not because of any exaggerated feature, not because of any obvious deformity, but because of what wasn't there. Where the mouth should have been, there was only a pale, empty space. No lips. No hint of teeth. Just skin. As if the area had been erased from reality, not just from the drawing. "You're a freelance illustrator, right?" the detective asked. "You do true crime channels, thumbnails, that kind of thing." I nodded. That's how he'd found me, through my YouTube collaborations. I'd become the horror guy who made eerie cover art and realistic police-style sketches for narration channels. It was a decent niche. I was used to corpses and killers. They didn't usually follow me off the screen. At the time, he continued, we asked 3 different sketch artists to draw what the witnesses described. This one is mine. I was still a police artist then. He tapped the plastic sleeve with a nicotine-stained finger. The witnesses all said the same thing. I can't see his mouth. I can't remember it. It's like, it's missing. We thought it was stress. Trauma. But when all 3 sketches came back, the mouth area was always wrong. Blurred. Smudged. Or, in my case. He gestured helplessly at his own work. Nothing at all. I slid the sketch out of the sleeve to get a better look. The eyes were the worst part. They were too real, sharp, almost photographic. Narrow, slightly upturned, framed by lashes that were drawn with obsessive detail. They stared directly forward, as if looking through the paper and into whoever dared to hold it. The nose, the hair, the jawline were all generic, the way police sketches often are. But the eyes were fixed and alive. You said you wanted me to do a restoration? I asked carefully. The detective hesitated. For a moment, his gaze drifted over my shoulder, toward the cafe window, where the late-night reflection of the city floated, trains passing on elevated tracks, neon piling up on the glass, the ghost of my own face staring back. Not a restoration, he said. I want you to finish it. Finish it how? Give him a mouth. I laughed because I thought he was joking. His expression didn't change. The noise of the cafe dimmed in my ears. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of the espresso machine, even the faint J-pop song playing overhead, all of it faded beneath a quiet, crawling unease. You want me to make one up? I asked. You draw killers for a living, he said. You know how to make a face look right. If we had had a clear sketch back then, maybe. His voice trailed off. Maybe we would have caught him. Maybe those women would still be alive. My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. The case was famous enough that I'd heard of it even before tonight. The media called it the stairwell murders. 3 women had been killed in the same old apartment building in Saitama. All 3 attacks happened in the stairwell between the 5th and 6th floors. Each victim had been found with their neck broken and their eyes wide open, as if still staring at something when they died. The killer was never caught. I'd even used the case as inspiration for a horror thumbnail once. I'm retired, the detective said. Nobody asked me to do this. The department's moved on. But I haven't. His hands were trembling slightly as he reached for his coffee. I heard your work on that narration channel. The way people reacted to your drawings. It felt like he was in the room, they said. Like I was looking at the real killer. He gave a small, bitter smile. I want you to do that again. For him. I looked down at the unfinished face. And if I say no? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. Instead, he slid a second item from the folder, a small, black and white photograph. It showed the apartment building's stairwell, dimly lit by a single bare bulb at the landing. In the corner of the image, half in shadow, was a shape that might have been a person, or might have been a trick of the grainy film. "You see it?" he whispered. I didn't, not clearly. But I nodded anyway, just to break the tension. "Just try," he said. "If you can't do it, you can't. But at least look. Really look. Maybe you'll see what we couldn't." I should have walked away. Instead, I took the folder home. My apartment was small, but the wall above my desk was covered in art, prints, sketches, and a few framed thumbnails from popular horror videos I'd worked on. It was a strange kind of trophy collection. Each image represented a video that had passed 1 million views, a story that had crawled into enough people's heads to be called viral. I clipped the old composite sketch to my drawing board, next to my digital tablet. The eyes watched me. I told myself I was imagining the sensation of being observed. It wasn't the first time. When you stare at faces long enough, they begin to stare back. That's just how the brain works. I turned on my desk lamp. The yellowish pool of light fell across the sketch, bringing out the texture of the cheap old paper. The rest of the room sank into shadow. Outside, somewhere down the street, the elevator in my own building rumbled to a stop. I heard the faint ding as the doors opened. A moment later, the sound of footsteps on the stairs echoed faintly through the thin walls. 5th and 6th floor, I thought, and shuddered. "Okay," I muttered to the sketch. "Let's see what you're hiding." I started by tracing the existing features onto my tablet. The eyes, the nose, the hairline. I kept them as close to the original as possible. The detective's style was old-fashioned, but precise. He'd had a steady hand back then. Once I had a clean digital outline, I zoomed in on the empty area where the mouth should be. In my headphones, a playlist of ambient music played quietly, something I used to keep myself focused while I worked. Tonight, it only made the silence between notes feel bigger. What kind of mouth would belong to those eyes? That was the question. Wide, thin, crooked, scarred. I tried a few variations, rough sketches layered on top of the blank area. Each one looked wrong. The mouth either made the face too soft, too kind, or too cartoonishly evil. None of them matched the cold, unreadable stare of the eyes. I deleted each attempt. At some point, I noticed my hand was shaking. "Get a grip," I told myself. "It's just a drawing." But the longer I stared at that blank skin, the more it felt like a wound in the image. A hole the world was refusing to fill. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. The numbers on the digital clock next to my monitor blurred and then came into focus, 2:13 a.m. I exhaled slowly. "Enough for tonight," I said. As I reached for the light switch, something flickered at the edge of my vision. On the screen, in the otherwise empty mouth area, a thin, curved line had appeared. I froze, my hand hovering above the switch. It was faint, barely visible, as if some leftover part of one of my deleted sketches had survived. A ghost of a line. It curved upward, like the beginning of a smile. I hadn't drawn that. Had I? I sat down again, heart thumping in my chest. My fingers hovered over the undo shortcut. But instead of hitting it, I zoomed in further. The line was not smooth. It was made up of tiny scratches, uneven, like it had been etched in by a shaking hand. The tablet registered no recent strokes. I checked the history panel. My last action had been the deletion of the previous mouth attempt, nothing else. I glanced at the physical sketch clipped to the board. The paper version now had the same faint line. My breath caught. It was impossible. I would have noticed if it had been there before. I was sure of it. The elevator down the hall rumbled again. Somewhere above me, footsteps moved slowly down the stairs. I turned on every light in my apartment and left the sketch where it was, face down. I didn't sleep well. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a notification as I was making coffee. A local news alert. I almost ignored it. Then the word stairwell caught my eye in the preview. My stomach tightened. I unlocked the screen and read the headline. "Woman found dead in stairwell of Saitama apartment building." The article was short. The building was in a different part of the prefecture than the original stairwell murders, but the details were uncomfortably similar. A woman in her 30s, found between the 5th and 6th floors, neck broken, eyes open. Police were investigating possible connections to past cases. I put the phone down slowly. On my desk, the composite sketch lay waiting, face down. I didn't want to turn it over. Eventually, I did. The faint line at the mouth had darkened overnight, as if someone had gone over it again and again with a pencil. The curve was unmistakable now. It was smiling. Not widely. Not grotesquely. Just a small, satisfied curve. I felt something cold move through me, like water finding its way into old cracks. This is coincidence, I told myself. You're tired. You're scaring yourself with your own work, like an idiot. To prove it, I opened the photo app on my phone and scrolled back to the pictures I'd taken of the sketch the night before. I found one from just after I got home, another from when I first traced it, and one more I had snapped absent-mindedly around 1 a.m. In all of them, the mouth area was completely blank. No line. I stared at the phone until my vision blurred. Then, because doing nothing felt worse than doing something, I sat back down at my desk and began to draw again. I told myself I was taking control of the image. If I was the one shaping the mouth, then whatever was happening wasn't supernatural. It was just my mind, trying to rationalize fear. So I drew. I followed the curve that had appeared, smoothing it, defining it. I added the upper lip, thin and pale. I suggested the lower lip, slightly fuller, the shadow under it hinting at a well-defined chin. The more detail I added, the more the face seemed to settle. The blankness was gone. It was a face now. A whole one. The kind of face you might pass on the street and never notice until it turned toward you and smiled. When I finished, my hands weren't shaking anymore. There, I said aloud. Now you're done. The eyes looked different now. Less empty. They seemed to be focusing on something just over my shoulder. A notification sound from my computer made me jump. It was a new email from the detective. Subject: turn on the news. I ignored the email and opened a live stream from a local TV channel instead. A reporter stood in front of an apartment building, police tape fluttering in the background. The caption at the bottom of the screen read, "Another stairwell death, possible serial case?" My phone buzzed almost at the same time with another news alert. I muted the stream and opened the article instead. Man found dead in apartment stairwell. Different city. Different building. Same floors. 5th to 6th. Neck broken. Eyes open. Time of death, approximately 2 a.m. About an hour after I'd started drawing the mouth. A cold sweat prickled along my spine. It's coincidence, I thought. Random. Bad timing. That's all. But my gaze was pulled back to the screen. The completed face stared back at me, lips curved in that small, knowing smile. For the first time, I noticed something about the shape of the jaw, the cut of the hair. It reminded me of someone. I opened my YouTube studio page in another tab. The last horror narration I collaborated on had gone up a week ago. The thumbnail featured one of my more realistic killers, glowering beneath a flickering street lamp. I opened the comments section and scrolled. There it was, a pinned comment from the channel owner, thanking me by name for the art. Underneath, dozens of replies. One of them, from a user with a generic gray profile picture, said, "Can you draw him again?" This time smiling. My heart thudded once, hard, in my chest. The comment was 3 days old. I clicked on the username. The profile was empty. No uploads. No playlist. Just one public liked videos section. It contained only 3 videos. All of them were news clips about the original stairwell murders. I didn't reply to the comment. I didn't email the detective back. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Unfinished Sketch. I saved the new version of the face inside, along with a scan of the original. I told myself I was going to send it to the detective later, when I'd calmed down. Instead, I found myself staring at it. Zooming in. The closer I got, the more I noticed tiny irregularities I hadn't put there. Fine lines at the corners of the mouth, as if from frequent smiling. A faint indentation beneath the lower lip. Little scars around the nose. I hadn't drawn those. Had I? Later that night, as I sat in the dark living room pretending to watch TV, my phone vibrated again. It was a message. Not an email, not a comment. A direct message on one of the social platforms where I posted my art occasionally. The account had no avatar, no bio, no posts. Just a name, The Sixth Step. The message was short. I like what you did with my face. My throat went dry. Before I could block the account, another message appeared. Let's finish it. Attached was a photo. It showed the stairwell from the original case. Same cracked concrete steps, same chipped paint on the rail, same narrow window letting in gray daylight. The image was old, grainy, low resolution. But there was something new in it now. On the fifth step from the landing, a dark shape was slumped against the wall. A person. Their head was tilted at an unnatural angle. Their eyes were wide open. Their mouth was blurred. I threw the phone onto the couch like it had burned me. For a long time, I just sat there, listening. My building was quiet. Too quiet. Then, faintly, like a memory, I heard it, the low rumble of the elevator. The distant ding as it stopped. The slow, measured footsteps on the stairs. Coming up. 4th floor. 5th. 6th. My apartment was on the 6th floor. I checked the peephole. The hallway was empty. I stood there for a long time, watching the distorted fisheye view of the corridor. The elevator doors at the far end. The dim emergency light above the stairwell door. Nothing moved. Eventually, I forced myself to turn away. Back at my desk, the sketch waited. The mouth seemed wider now. The corners had curled up just a little more, as if amused. The lamp above the desk flickered once, then steadied. Okay, I whispered. You win. I took the sketch down, stuffed it into the folder, and shoved the folder into the back of my closet, behind a stack of old art books I never opened anymore. I blocked the 6th step on every platform. I closed my laptop. I tried to forget. For 2 nights, nothing happened. Then the 3rd news alert came. 3rd body found in stairwell. Are the copycat killings connected? This time, I didn't read the article. Instead, I went straight to my closet, pulled out the folder, and opened it. The face inside had changed again. The hair was a little shorter. The nose a little sharper. The jawline thinner. But it wasn't just random variation. It looked like someone specific now. Someone I almost recognized. Someone I might pass in a mirror. My phone buzzed. No name. No number. Unknown caller. I let it ring. It stopped. Then my phone vibrated again with a text from an unknown number. Why won't you answer? A moment later, another message came through. I need you to draw the rest. Attached was another photo. This one wasn't of a stairwell. It was of a desk. My desk. The angle was slightly off, as if taken from a low corner of the room. In the photo, I could see my monitor, the clutter of pens and mugs, the sketch clipped to the drawing board. And me. I was sitting in the chair, hunched forward, staring at the screen. My hands were in motion, blurred. Drawing. I hadn't drawn anything today. My legs went weak. Slowly, I turned around and scanned the room. No one was there. The window was closed. The door was locked. But when I glanced back at the sketch, the mouth was different again. This time, it was open. Not in a scream, not in a laugh. Just slightly parted, as if about to speak. Between the lips, the suggestion of teeth gleamed faintly in the lamplight. I could almost hear the voice. Keep going. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't when I realized that whoever, or whatever, was sending the messages could see me in my room. It wasn't when I noticed that each change in the sketch coincided with a new body in a stairwell somewhere in Saitama. It wasn't even when I finally understood who the face was starting to look like. It was when the detective called me. His voice was ragged over the line. I shouldn't have dragged you into this, he said. This is my fault. I thought maybe if we could see him clearly, he'd be easier to find. But he doesn't want to be found. He wants to be finished. Detective, I said, my voice shaking. The sketch, it's changing. On its own. The mouth. I know, he whispered. There was a pause. Then he said something that made my blood turn to ice. I looked at mine. What do you mean? The original, he said. The old composite I drew. I hadn't touched it since I gave you the copy. But tonight, I pulled it out. I thought. I don't know what I thought. Another pause. I could hear traffic in the background. The faint echo of footsteps. It has a mouth now, he said. And it's not your version. It drew itself, the way it wanted to be. I recognized it immediately. His breathing quickened. It looks like me, he said. You understand? Not 20 years ago. Now. The wrinkles, the sagging skin, the way my jaw has changed. It's my current face. I'm the killer's head. I couldn't speak. I think, he said slowly, that's his joke. Every time someone tries to remember him, he puts on their face. He hides behind it. Borrowed features. Borrowed lives. That's why no one could describe his mouth. Because it was never really his. A car horn blared faintly on his end of the line. I'm going to the building, he said. The original one. Where it began. The landlord finally agreed to let me in. I have to see the stairwell again. I have to know if he's really there, or if it's just us doing this to ourselves. Don't, I whispered. Please don't go there. If I don't, he said, he'll just pick someone else. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, then at the sketch. The face on the page had changed again. Older. Heavier lines around the eyes. Deep grooves from nose to mouth. A familiar tiredness. I went to the mirror above my sink. I'm 32. Not old, not yet. But the face in the sketch was creeping toward mine. It was like seeing a future version of myself rendered in graphite and shadow. A version of me that had seen many things, and enjoyed every single one. The detective never called back. Later that night, there was one more news alert. Retired detective found dead in abandoned apartment stairwell. I didn't open that article, either. I didn't need to. I already knew which floors it had happened between. I already knew what his eyes looked like when they found him. I also knew what the sketch would look like now. I didn't check it. Instead, I took the folder out onto my balcony. From the 6th floor, the city looked like a map lit up from below, all lines and points of light. The air smelled like rain and exhaust. I set the folder on the concrete and poured lighter fluid over it. My hands were steady as I struck the match. For a second, the tiny flame lit my fingers with warm orange light. Then I dropped it. The paper caught quickly. The sketches curled and blackened, faces melting into twisted shadows. The plastic sleeve cracked and warped. Heat licked at my knuckles as I stepped back. From inside the blaze, for just a moment, I saw the eyes. They were still clear, still watching. The mouth, fully formed now, widened into something that might have been a grin. Then the whole thing collapsed into ash. I stayed there until the last ember died. The next morning, there were no news alerts. No messages. No footsteps on the stairs at odd hours. For 3 days, the world was quiet. I began to believe it was over. Then I opened YouTube Studio to check the stats on my latest video. There was a new notification. Your art has been used in a new video, it said. Click here to view. I frowned. I hadn't taken any new commissions this week. The thumbnail was what froze me in my chair. It was a face rendered in smooth digital lines, clean and sharp. My style. My brushwork. My textures. But I had never drawn this image. The eyes were bright and narrow. The hair was familiar. The nose. The jawline. The mouth. The title of the video was in English. Narration: The Unfinished Sketch, Japanese Horror Story. The channel name was mine. The upload time was 10 minutes ago. My hands hovered above the keyboard. In the reflection of my dark monitor, I could see my own face. The longer I stared, the more I noticed the little changes. The fine line starting to form at the corner of my mouth. The slight shadow beneath my lower lip. The way my expression was beginning to curve, just a little, into a smile. I still don't remember drawing that thumbnail. I don't remember recording the narration or uploading the video. But when I hit play, the voice that begins to speak is undeniably mine. And he sounds so happy to finally be finished.